What is Buddhist practice? Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. Any consequence must necessarily arise from an action, but not simply from a wish. Dalai Lama. Diseases cannot disappear by themselves. A patient who constantly chants the name of a medicine will not benefit unless he takes the actual medicine. Adi Shankara, Indian sage. The scriptures in the Dharma of the Buddha are not meant to accumulate knowledge, but to transform ourselves. The finger symbolizes the scriptures, the teachings of the Buddha, while the moon represents the truth, direct experience, and the realization of enlightenment. If we mistake the finger for the moon, we will never see the moon. Similarly, if we go to the temple and only see the monks but not the Buddha, or recognize the Buddha but do not hear his teachings, or only hear his teachings without reflecting on our own actions and mind to practice self-examination, it is just like seeing the finger but not the moon. Everything we see in the temple, from the bells and drums to the rituals, is often just form and embellishment. The teachings of the monks might just be a few lines from the scriptures, expanded upon. The scriptures seem vast, with some having hundreds of thousands of pages. The various sects and schools can be confusing to differentiate. So, what exactly is Buddhism? Where do we find the Dharma? How should we practice? Projecting our mind outward, expecting something from the outside, is completely contrary to Buddhism and the Dharma. The Dharma or Buddhism is an inner science, and the object of this science is consciousness. Striving to directly experience what this science brings about is called practice. But what should we practice? Practicing means overcoming, transforming, and developing the mind. Why do we need to overcome, transform, and develop the mind? Because the mind is the source of all disturbing emotions, all distorted thoughts, and all forms of suffering. But it is also the source of happiness, of all positive and noble qualities. Practicing also means calming the mind, observing, analyzing, understanding its operations to become aware of its true nature. This true nature is often obscured by ignorance, which is the mistaken understanding of the essence of all things. The mind is continuously dominated by confusion, illusions, animal instincts, and various emotions as if controlled by a master, and that master is nothing but the self, or ego, which people often mistakenly believe to be something eternal and unchanging. Practice consists of 3 levels or 3 different aspects: ethical conduct, shila; meditative concentration, samatha; and wisdom, prajna. Ethical conduct, also called moral conduct, means voluntarily following certain precepts with the aim of simplifying our lives, helping to regulate and control our actions. Beyond this basic purpose, ethical conduct also has higher meanings, guiding life towards the ideal of nonviolence, creating a harmonious and peaceful life, integrating with those around us and all sentient beings. In summary, moral conduct or keeping precepts means respecting and loving life, being close to, integrating with, and embracing life. Meditative concentration, also called meditation samatha, is a way to truly and fully live, living directly with the moments happening with our mind and body. Meditative concentration helps eliminate obstacles hindering the mind, such as distraction, anxiety, dullness, restlessness, fear, anger, hatred. In summary, it avoids disturbing emotions, reestablishes peace and calm for the mind. From that peace and calm, the mind will recognize its true nature and inherently increase its perceptual strength, helping us to reason and perceive the true nature of all things around us. Analyzing and reasoning to perceive the reality of all things and events is called wisdom practice. The supreme perception, or wisdom, prajna, is the understanding that transcends the manifestations in the mind, as these manifestations are merely perceptions like other senses, not understanding. Wisdom practice helps perceive the impermanent nature of all phenomena, recognizing their non-self nature, understanding that all phenomena, including the self, do not contain any inherent or intrinsic existence. These 3 practices can be viewed as different levels, like education in school, from primary to secondary, then to university. However, in reality, these 3 levels of practice are more flexible and can be practiced simultaneously. It is important to understand that without a pure body, honest speech, and a virtuous mind, one cannot practice meditative concentration. Without a peaceful mind free from disturbing emotions, one cannot develop wisdom. Finally, practice requires a strength to drive and sustain it. The source of energy providing the necessary strength for practice is compassion. Compassion is always the motivation for every gesture, word, and thought of ours, the most sacred and essential force to unify all actions aimed at achieving results in practice. Ethical conduct. Observing ethical conduct regulates life, moderates certain physical actions, controls speech, and proactively manages thoughts, revealing a demeanor of peace and relaxation. When others see a person practicing ethical conduct, they will immediately notice the calm and friendly demeanor of that individual. Observing precepts is not about suppressing impulses or restraining instincts related to the body and mind, but rather placing oneself in positive emotions, such as love and care for others, without causing harm to any living being. Monastics must choose a disciplined lifestyle. Celibacy, not staying in one place for long, choosing simplicity and frugality. Besides these rules, there are hundreds of other precepts recorded in the scriptures that monastics must follow. These precepts are not meant to bind them, but to help them free themselves from the entanglements and competitive life of the secular world, and most importantly, to avoid mental disturbances. Lay people, on the other hand, should at least observe the 5 basic precepts: not killing, not stealing, not engaging in sexual misconduct, not lying, and not using intoxicants that cause drunkenness and addiction, while also striving to observe additional precepts. Observing precepts is a voluntary, natural, gentle, and calm action, but it also requires determination and a great deal of willpower to abandon harmful, selfish, and malicious habits that are the source of disturbing emotions and suffering. Ethical conduct or observing precepts is a way to gradually become accustomed to a virtuous lifestyle, nonviolence, awareness of one's responsibility to society and the environment, and letting go of ordinary attachments to choose clarity and lightness for the mind. Those who observe precepts create an atmosphere of peace around them. The Indian sage Ramana Maharshi, 1879 to 1950, said, "Reforming oneself is reforming the whole world. The sun shines naturally. It does not seek to change anyone. Because it radiates, the entire world is flooded with light. Reforming oneself is a way to bring light to this world." Thus, observing precepts is not just for oneself, but for those around us. Understanding this, observing precepts becomes an act of compassion, love, and generosity, an altruistic act as natural as our breath, like the red blood circulating in our veins. Observing precepts by respecting prohibitive actions is relatively easy, thanks to the natural disposition to distinguish right from wrong, or due to the fear of acquiring negative karma. However, observing precepts also has a more refined level when one understands the profound meaning of these precepts. For instance, we do not kill, but we also need to love life and see the life of all beings as our happiness. We do not covet others' possessions, but we should rejoice in others' wealth and well-being. And the more we rejoice in the happiness of the rich, the more we will pity and help the poor. Observing precepts through 10 positive actions is more challenging as it requires zeal, altruism, and kindness, demanding us to be mindful and diligent in every physical action, every word, and every thought. The refined level of precepts will directly lead to positive actions, such as not killing helps us see the happiness of all beings, not stealing helps us love the poor, not engaging in sexual misconduct helps us love the poor who have to sell themselves, not deceiving and exploiting the naive and weak. The refined level of the 10 positive actions is compassion for people. Looking further is love for humanity, and higher still is boundless compassion for all sentient beings. Meditation practice, samatha. Terminological aspect: meditation practice, or samatha, is a form of training that many people misunderstand or grasp only vaguely. Therefore, it is essential to define clearly what meditation is. Many have never meditated but want to know what it is, and many who do meditate wonder why they do it. Terminologically, there are many inaccurate terms. Meditation, in a broad sense, is called bhavana in Sanskrit, which means training or cultivation. However, people often confuse meditation with dhyana, which means concentration or single-pointed focus. They also confuse meditation with samatha, which means calm or tranquility of the mind. It's important to note that dhyana and samatha are often used interchangeably, but that is another issue. In summary, samatha practice is about training the mind to be peaceful and balanced. The term meditation is translated into Western languages as meditation. If understood in the common sense of the word, meaning reflection or contemplation, it is incorrect. However, if we look at the root of the word in Latin, we find that meditation comes from medeor, which means to care for. From medeor comes the word medico, which means to heal. If we understand meditation as a way to heal the mind, it is not entirely wrong. Meaning of meditation practice. Meditation in general, or samatha practice specifically, is not a method to reach a state of mind isolated from the external world, the environment, or external reality. The stillness of the body and relaxation of inner tension do not mean making the mind numb. Meditation does not mean sinking into a state of unconsciousness, unawareness, hypnosis, mental stupor, or losing thought and clarity. Nor is it an act of sitting cross-legged to fight against various thoughts and disturbing emotions that appear in the mind. So what is meditation or samatha practice? It is a means to correctly and accurately perceive our sensations, thoughts, and their relationship with the surrounding environment. It should be understood that Buddhism views the mind as a sensory organ, on par with other sensory organs, with thoughts being perceptions arising from this sensory organ, called the mind. In general terms, meditation or samatha practice is about living with the experiences and perceptions of the natural state of mind and body, free from all troubles and disturbing influences. Practicing in this way means simplifying the activities of the mind and all perceptions, being aware but without expectation, without a specific purpose, without calculation. If understood in this way, meditation when sitting still or meditation while active is not much different. The goal is to simplify all activities and thoughts. But what does simplification mean? In the Agama Sutra, the Buddha taught, in each person there are 5 thieves dragging them into a degraded life. What are these 5 thieves? 1. Form. 2. Sensation. 3. Perception. 4. Formation. 5. Consciousness. People are always preoccupied with these 5 kinds of sensations. Form, including external phenomena and mental constructs, is perceived by the senses. Perception gives rise to formation. Formation turns into consciousness. And the mind clings to these formations or consciousness, mistaking them for the self or ego, which is the source of all disturbances. Thus, simplification means not allowing the above process to complete its cycle of entanglement, stopping the thieves from rampaging and disturbing. Practically, when we sit in meditation, we hear surrounding sounds, we recognize there is sound, and that's it. But we do not allow the sound, which could be someone's cough, a car passing by, music playing, to create a formation, meaning the sound does not make us annoyed or pleased. When someone speaks, we hear the voice but do not differentiate whether it is soft or harsh, what the meaning of the words is, who they are talking to, whether they are praising or mocking someone. Not differentiating means we do not interpret, not allowing the voice to create a formation. When a thought appears in the mind, whether it is about the past or the future, whether it clings to any event or form, we do not allow it to create a formation that leads to emotions such as liking, disliking, regret, anger, love, hatred, joy, pleasure, hope, calculation, planning, etc. In short, disturbing emotions. Observe and watch how the thought appears, how it develops, and how it disappears. Then another thought continues to appear, continuously like that. When we recognize that these thoughts arise from the sensory perception of the mind, not as something inherently existing within us, they are like thieves, ready to drag us into disturbing emotions. When we achieve this, it means we have achieved the result of samatha practice, a balanced and tranquil state of mind, meaning simply receiving all perceptions without clinging to anything. In the Agama Sutra, the Buddha taught, when the mind is controlled, it will be like a rock lying in the open, exposed to all directions. The rock lying in the yard, even if rain falls, it cannot dissolve. Even if the sun heats it, it cannot melt. Even if the wind blows, it cannot lift it. A controlled mind will be like that rock. Zen master Huang Hai, 1627–1715, of the Li dynasty wrote a poem. In the vast sky, the geese fly across, their shadows reflected in the cold water. The geese have no intention of leaving traces. The water has no mind to hold the shadows. Sitting meditation posture. Practically, how do you practice samatha? First, you must sit down to meditate. Once accustomed, you can meditate at any time, while walking, standing, eating, or working. The sitting posture in meditation is crucial as it is the result of thousands of years of experience, helping the body remain still for a long time without much effort. Why keep the body still? Because the body is relatively easy to control, but if we cannot control the body, how can we grasp the mind that is always jumping and changing? The body and mind are closely related. Keeping the body still and balanced will help subdue the mind and bring peace more easily. The meditation posture is summarized in 7 points. 1. Sit on a cushion called a zafu, cross-legged in the full lotus position, 1 foot on top of the opposite thigh. If not possible, sit in the half lotus position, 1 foot on the opposite thigh. Comfort is crucial. If feeling sore or numb, you can switch sides. 2. Keep the spine straight. The lower back may arch slightly forward, helping the abdomen not to be compressed and the diaphragm to stretch. The slight arch in the lower back also helps the shoulders relax. 3. Spread the shoulders straight to open the chest. Keep the shoulders natural, not hunched or sagging. 4. Place the hands in front of the abdomen, on the legs, with the back of the right hand on the left palm, and the thumbs lightly touching each other. In Zen Buddhism, place the right hand underneath and the left hand on top, the thumbs touching to form a circle with the index fingers. The Dalai Lama advises placing the left hand underneath as more effective. 5. Slightly lower the head to keep the neck straight. 6. Keep the mouth, jaw, and tongue natural, with the tongue touching the roof of the mouth and the tip of the tongue touching the teeth. 7. Open the eyes slightly, looking forward and slightly downward at a distance of about 3 meters on the ground. Look vaguely, not focusing on external objects, but inward to observe the mind's movements. If the eyelids automatically droop, keep them as they are, not forcing them to remain open. While meditating, be fully awake. Observe the breath and the thoughts continuously appearing and changing in the mind, always vigilant to maintain the correct sitting posture, not slouching, sagging shoulders, or forgetting to keep the thumbs touching, and most importantly, not dozing off. The buttocks and knees firmly touch the ground, as solid as a mountain, with the center of gravity rooted in the earth. The spine straightens, extending into space while focusing on the breath to integrate with life. Cross the legs to demonstrate the determination to remain still and cultivate the strength of non-violence. Sitting like this creates peace, openness, and non-attachment for the mind. But what is the purpose of achieving this state? Meditation is not unique to Buddhism. Some non-Buddhist traditions also practice meditation to achieve balance and clarity of mind, stopping there. Buddhists must look further. Meditation in Buddhism is not about sitting to find balance and happiness for oneself, but sitting for the peace of all beings. Creating peace and clarity of mind to perceive the true nature of all phenomena, seeing the ultimate and supreme nature of reality to achieve enlightenment, aiming to help and guide all beings more effectively. In Volume 1 of the Bhavana Krama, Stages of Meditation by Kamalashila in the 8th century, it is written, "When the mind is fixed on a meditation object, it can examine that object through deep introspection, and from there, clear understanding will arise, and the seed of ignorance will be eradicated. But if this is not achieved, then simply practicing meditation in the way of non-Buddhists will not eliminate the impurities." Clear understanding and supreme insight are wisdom. Wisdom leads to enlightenment, and enlightenment leads to liberation. Therefore, samatha practice prepares the mind to achieve supernatural understanding. Cultivating wisdom, or prajna in Sanskrit, means ultimate understanding. The practice to attain ultimate understanding involves 3 stages. 1. Listening to teachings or studying the scriptures. 2. Reflecting, contemplating, and analyzing the profound meanings of the teachings or the recorded scriptures, such as reflecting on the 4 noble truths: impermanence, dependent origination, non-self, emptiness. 3. Meditating to directly perceive and experience the ultimate understanding, beyond all processes of reasoning and judgment. These 3 stages of practice are not aimed at accumulating conventional knowledge, but are directed towards perceiving our true nature and the reality of the world around us. This perception is also called vipassana meditation, a dynamic and active state of mind, more so than the tranquil state of samatha. Like the 3 levels of practice, These three stages of understanding are interrelated and support each other in fostering ultimate understanding. The first two stages rely on conventional understanding, but the third stage must transcend all formulaic knowledge and the dualistic constructs of ordinary consciousness. The third stage relies on intuition and the tranquility of the mind, brought about by meditation to perceive our true nature and the essence of the universe. Some individuals with a high level of concentration may proceed directly from samatha practice to direct perception of the nature of all things, bypassing the first two stages. This is also the method of practice in Zen Buddhism, and particularly in the Zen school. However, achieving this is very difficult, so it is better to rely on study and reflection to support perception. Many people who attempt direct perception through meditation without study and reflection often become confused and abandon their practice. Conventional knowledge and ultimate understanding. The above section mentions conventional knowledge and understanding that transcends the dualistic constructs of consciousness. What do these concepts mean? In everyday life, we express, dialogue, reflect, reason, think, even in scientific and philosophical terms based on conventions. Without conventions, there can be no language and no understanding. For example, if two people of different nationalities using different languages try to communicate, they will not understand each other because each relies on the conventions of their own language. In summary, all knowledge we acquire is based on conventions, creating a conventional reality, a world built by conventions. All phenomena, meaning all objects and events around us, can only stand firm based on conventions. They do not possess absolute, ultimate, or supreme nature. This understanding is also called dualistic or oppositional knowledge. For instance, when we say white, we naturally understand black, because if black had never existed, we could not distinguish white, and thus white would not exist. Similarly, the reasoning process applies to black. Ignorance and knowledge share the same nature, but possess dualistic characteristics, supporting and opposing each other. If there were no ignorance, knowledge would be meaningless and vice versa. Distinguishing between the knowing subject and the known object is also considered dualistic knowledge. In summary, dualistic and conventional knowledge is relative, used to define and construct a relative reality. However, conventional knowledge through consciousness is necessary to analyze reality, such as understanding clearly and coherently the cause of suffering and the path leading to the cessation of suffering. Understanding that transcends all conventions and dualistic constructs is called ultimate understanding, prajna. It is not a form of ordinary intellectual knowledge. Ultimate understanding, also called absolute understanding, can only be achieved through intuition and meditation practice. Absolute understanding is used to perceive and grasp the absolute truth, the essence of all phenomena. The object of ultimate understanding, thus, cultivating wisdom means practicing to attain ultimate and absolute understanding, a supernatural understanding called prajna paramita, perfection of wisdom. The final stage in the three stages of cultivating wisdom helps achieve prajna paramita, which is used to perceive the absolute truth of all phenomena. When the essence of all objects and events is intuitively perceived perfectly, ultimately and supremely through prajna paramita, it means enlightenment has been achieved. The nature of phenomena bears many aspects, such as dependent origination, impermanence, non-self, and emptiness. The nature of impermanence and dependent origination of all things can be perceived through study and reasoning in the first two stages of cultivating wisdom, but non-self and emptiness require deeper perception. Below are brief definitions of dependent origination, impermanence, non-self, and emptiness. A. Dependent origination. Dependent origination or dependent co-arising refers to the interconnected, interdependent, and mutually conditioning nature of all objects and events. All phenomena can only exist through the combination of many conditions or many causal factors to create them. No object or event can exist independently. From illusions to nightmares and dreams, from thoughts in the mind to objects and events in the universe, all are interconnected, creating conditions that interact to coexist. The principle of dependent origination, or the interdependent and intercreating nature of the universe, is summarized by the Buddha with the concept of cause and effect, concretized by a wheel with 12 spokes symbolizing the 12 links of dependent origination, 12 nidanas. In the Majjhima Nikaya, Book 3, page 63, the Buddha's teaching is recorded as follows. Imasmin sati idam hoti, imasupada idam upajati, imasmi idam nahoti, imasa niroda idam nirajhati. Literal translation: when this exists, that exists. With the arising of this, that arises. When this does not exist, that does not exist. With the cessation of this, that ceases. Simpler translation: this exists, that comes into being. This arises, that is born. This does not exist, that does not appear. This ceases, that does not arise. The above passage is one of the simplest and at the same time deepest teachings of the Buddha. Although extremely simple, it fully explains the nature of this universe. Western scientists and philosophers are deeply impressed by the profound meaning contained in this simple statement by the Buddha. Impermanence. The principle of dependent origination or interdependence shows that all objects and events are interconnected to appear or self-destruct. On closer inspection, we will see that the conditions or causal factors creating the interdependence of all phenomena are always changing. Consequently, all objects and events are constantly changing and transforming, from thoughts and emotions in the mind to all phenomena in the body and around us, such as the millions of cells in the body being born and dying every moment. These changes are also affecting each blade of grass swaying in the wind in the yard, to the countless stars moving in the universe. Nothing is static, immobile, and unchanging. The most fluid movements are the operations of thoughts and emotions in the mind. There are sudden movements, such as breaking a branch, a balloon bursting, or a lightning flash in the sky. There are slower movements, such as the process of an earthquake. We may feel the ground is stationary, but in reality, tectonic plates float on the molten rock below the Earth's surface. The tectonic plates crack, break, drift, press against each other, or pull apart, causing oceans to shrink or expand. All these movements are very slow, averaging only a few centimeters per year, but when two plates press against or overlap each other until suddenly breaking, an earthquake occurs. Thus, the ground is always changing, but humans divide and fight over territory on these ever-changing tectonic plates. Looking further, we see the universe like a swirling storm, spinning and scattering celestial dust, but humans still seek something permanent and unchanging within it, and see the sky as immobile. In summary, all phenomena never remain the same but are always changing and disappearing every moment. The transient and temporary nature of all phenomena is the source of suffering, creating constant anxiety in life, and death is one of the most terrifying anxieties. The Dalai Lama has said, "All things are impermanent. It is this impermanence that affects the cycle of all existence." The cycle of all existence is the world of samsara, see, non-self. The self is a composite of many causes and conditions. Therefore, the self is not something permanent and unchanging. Its existence depends on many causal factors and conditions. When the causal factors and conditions creating the self no longer converge, the self will also disappear. The concept of the self or ego is more accurately an illusion. We cannot identify, visualize, or imagine what constitutes the subject of thought. We cannot find anything that is the subject of recognition of recognitions, because the subject is the temporary result of a synthesis of many conditions, and it contains no inherent reality. Revisiting the description of samatha practice above, 5 thieves were mentioned: form, sensation, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. When teaching the 5 disciples in the deer park in Benares, the Buddha spoke about these disturbances as follows. These do not belong to the self is not these are not the ego of mine. The original Chinese scriptures call these 5 aggregates: form, sensation, perception, mental formation, and consciousness, creating the illusion of self or ego. D. Emptiness. In the Diamond Sutra, the Buddha said, like stars in the sky, like flies buzzing around, or sparks of a lamp, like a magical illusion, a dewdrop or a bubble, like a dream, a flash of lightning or a cloud, see all conditioned phenomena as such. The Buddha taught that all phenomena we perceive do not contain any inherent reality. They exist only within the framework of a reality we assign to them and consider objective. All objects and events, including the self or ego, do not possess any inherent, objective, or autonomous existence. They do not exist on their own. They exist through the process of cause and effect within the overarching network of interdependence and co-arising phenomena. All phenomena do not possess individual characteristics, do not contain any inherent nature, and do not have an independent status. They always depend on other conditions to exist. Their true nature is merely an illusion, unreal, simply names we assign to them, or in other words, they are constructs of the mind. The Buddha said, "Forms in all objects are merely designations. These designations are their nature." The Buddha's words in the Prajnaparamita Sutra, Subhuti, the Tathagata says that the particles of dust are not real. They are simply called particles of dust. The Tathagata says that the universe is not real, but it is simply called the universe. The Buddha's words in the Diamond Sutra. In summary, all phenomena on the ultimate level are not real, do not possess any permanent and eternal essence, and exist only on the level of relative truth, a truth based on dualistic and conventional understanding. On the level of absolute truth, they are emptiness, shunyata. The concept of emptiness applies to all phenomena, dharma shunyata, and even to humans, pugala shunyata. Nagarjuna said, "The aggregates are not the self, the aggregates are not in the self. The self is not in the aggregates, but the self also does not exist without the aggregates." Zen master Senkan, 6th century, the third patriarch of Chinese Zen Buddhism, said, "Objects are objects because they are mind. The mind is mind because they are objects. If we want to distinguish them as this or that, from the beginning they are just empty." Emptiness is a unique concept in Buddhism. Outside of Buddhism, no philosophy or science has recognized and pointed out this truth of reality. Here are some quotes from famous scientists that somewhat relate to the concept of emptiness. "We do not observe nature itself, but nature exposed to our method of questioning." Werner Heisenberg, 1901 to 1976, Nobel Prize in Physics, 1932. "This means the observed reality depends on the method, which is our subjective and conventional understanding. This reality is not the nature's essence. An independent reality cannot be assigned to any phenomenon, nor to any arrangement of observation." Niels Bohr, 1885 to 1962, Nobel Prize in Physics, 1922. This statement goes even further. All phenomena, including methods and results measured by scientific instruments, do not contain any inherent reality. Finally, it should be emphasized that concepts such as interdependence, dependent origination, impermanence, non-self, and emptiness are not independent concepts. They are merely aspects or distinct characteristics of reality. A phenomenon is interdependent because it is subject to the law of cause and effect, so it is always changing and impermanent. Because it is impermanent, it is not real. Its ultimate nature is non-self. Non-self means emptiness. The concept of emptiness is not a unique perspective of the mind, and it certainly is not a lofty ideal that practitioners must achieve. It is merely a means to help the mind develop understanding, to perceive the ultimate nature of reality, or in other words, to see the true essence of all phenomena. This perception is called wisdom or liberation. However, the scriptures say that only the Buddha can directly and simultaneously see both relative and absolute truths. Our perception still contains some entanglements in analysis, reasoning, and dualism, so practice must be persistent and long-lasting throughout the three immeasurable periods. Conclusion: this article aims to provide an overview of the stages of Buddhist practice and offer some definitions. To go further, that is, to truly practice, one must study the scriptures or learn from good and genuine teachers, and most importantly, put into practice what has been learned. For ethical conduct, Shila, one can learn more about the Noble Eightfold Path and the 6 paramitas. To practice concentration, samatha, long-term meditation practice is necessary. To cultivate wisdom, prajna, a solid understanding of the Buddha's teachings, a tranquil mind, and the power of reasoning and intuitive perception are required. Buddhism is an active faith, meaning it requires practice, and this practice is personal. The Buddhas do not give us anything ready-made. We must seek liberation ourselves. Practicing helps achieve 3 most precious abilities: compassion, purity, and wisdom. Perfecting ethical conduct leads to boundless compassion. Perfecting concentration brings clarity to the mind. Perfecting wisdom leads to supernatural understanding and liberation. Even if one earns a PhD in Buddhist philosophy, it does not mean one has eradicated ignorance. It merely means accumulating more dualistic, formulaic, and conventional knowledge. Even if one chants scriptures for decades, it does not mean one has achieved mindfulness and enlightenment. Even if one prays for the well-being and transcendence of countless people, it does not mean one has achieved personal liberation. In Buddhism, the essential and necessary practice is to transform one's own mind. Observing ethical conduct is not for oneself, but for the happiness of those around us. Sitting down to meditate is not for oneself, but for the peace of this world. Seeking and perceiving the true nature of the universe is not for oneself, but for the enlightenment of all sentient beings. Compassion is always the main motivation, the driving force behind practice. Scriptures say that to achieve enlightenment, one must practice over 3 immeasurable and infinite periods. To transcend these 3 immeasurable and infinite periods for enlightenment, a corresponding strength arising from compassion is needed, meaning compassion must also be immeasurable and infinite. The Dalai Lama has said, "A teacher should only speak of what he knows," meaning his own experiences. If what he teaches is only theoretical for him, you are better off looking it up in a book. It saves time. Apart from some goodwill and enthusiasm, I do not claim to have attained any particular experience. What is presented in this article is merely a collection from books, simplified for easier understanding with a few quotes I consider as exquisite offerings to the reader, respectfully like a ready meal. Let me end this article with a quote from Zen Master Dogen, 1200 to 1253. "Is there any jewel that naturally becomes radiant? Is there anyone who naturally succeeds just by having an idea? The jewel must be polished. A person needs to train. Always maintain humility and never loosen your practice."